Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 24th Washougal City Council workshop session. Rose, could we have the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Polinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Thank you. Before we get going, I've got two items for you. Number one is a request that we got to have this evening, if the council sees fit, as a no football score zone.
Oh.
So a score-free zone on the game tonight.
Did you hear about those?
Till we're done. Second one is that we will have an executive session at the end of this evening's meeting regarding potential litigation. No action to follow. With that, we will go into our first item, which is public comment. Any members of the public that would like to comment to council? Okay. You will have a second chance towards the end of the meeting. Presentations. We've got a presentation on Gorge Towns to Trails Preservation. I think Suzanne.
Hi there, I'm Suzanne Grover. I manage the parks, and I'm here to introduce Kevin Gorman, who will speak on the Gorge Towns to Trails project. But first, I want to give you a little background on some of the ideas on trails in our community. In surveys taken in both 2005 and 2010, residents rated trails as the #1 requested recreational activity in Washougal. Since 2007, the Parks Department has been planning and building trails outlined in our Parks Comprehensive Plan. Trail building is a slow process, mostly due to applications, permitting, and coordination preceding the physical work. This last Saturday, the Washougal Parks Department, with the help of a Parks Foundation grant, Eagle Scout Spencer Bradley, and a host of volunteers, built 1,900 lineal feet of trail through Eldridge Park. I'd like to stress that our residents love trails, and the Pacific Northwest has some of the best. So Friends of the Columbia River Gorge Executive Director Kevin Gorman is here to explain the scope of another fantastic trail project.
Thank you, Suzanne. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. So originally, Renee T. Cash, who is the program manager of Gorge Towns to Trails, was supposed to be here tonight, but I asked if I could take her place. One is because I wanted to introduce myself, and another is because we recently opened our third office, and it's in Washougal. So we now have offices in Portland, Hood River, and Washougal. So we're just a block or two away, and we're very excited to be here. And we're rightfully going to try to continue to advertise Washougal as a gateway to the gorge. And so this project really ties nicely into Washougal. So I'm going to talk through it a little bit. It may help if I could turn out the lights. Are the two back there? Right there. Great. So what we have here, it says Gorge Towns to Trails the next 25 years. Last year was the 25th anniversary of the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. So we've had 25 years. As many folks know here, we've had a lot of ups, we've had a lot of downs, but what we've seen over the years is a growing interest in recreation in the gorge, particularly on the Washington side. We've had a lot of land acquisition that is now primarily Forest Service, but also Washington State Parks. And a lot of that land was bought with the idea of future recreation, but it hasn't quite happened. So this idea is, how do we make the work that's been done over the past 25 years really put some finishing touches on it so we can have trail systems that not only run throughout the gorge but connect into the communities, and I'll explain why that's important. Let me go back first and looking at the public land. This is the National Scenic Area here, 1985, and if you look at the dark green, this is public land that existed. This is the whole waterfall area on the Oregon side, and the light green is private land. And I've highlighted the areas that we're focusing on. This is Washougal to Stevenson, Moser to the Dalles, and then our Lyle property, which I'll talk about. If you fast forward, you see that there's a big chunk in here that's now become public land There's quite a bit of public land here that didn't exist before, and it's created some opportunities that with a few key pieces, you can make connections from Washougal to North Bonneville to Stevenson. And so that's what our vision is how do we make those connections into the communities and throughout the scenic area. So this is a little easier map to read of kind of our priority areas. Again, Washougal to North Bonneville to Stevenson, actually Hood River to Mosier, because there's already a trail here, the historic highway, Hood River, Mosier to the Dalles, and then finally the Lisle area, which I'll explain. Now, why are we interested in this? A couple of reasons. One is, as I mentioned before, we're seeing a lot of increased recreation, and the gorge is starting to be discovered. This is from, this is a magazine, National Geographic Traveler, and a year or two ago, they rated 133 destinations around the world. Of those 133 destinations, the gorge ranked number 6 in the world. So it ranked higher than any national park in the country, ranked higher than the Serengeti, ranked higher than Kilimanjaro, Tuscany, and what they were ranking it was based on kind of a traveler's experience, the authenticity of the communities, the preservation of either the natural resources or the historic resources. And so the fact that the gorge rated so high is pretty tremendous. But I think there are some infrastructure opportunities here to take advantage of the people who really want a wonderful experience. Now, I mentioned increased recreation. One of the other issues is with more protected lands that are out there, people are finding out that this land is protected, and some people are, whether it's using ATVs or going in and creating illegal trails, there's recreation that's happening that's unplanned, and that affects wildlife. It brings in invasive species, and the more that we can have a planned system that actually people use and can serve as monitors, the better off we're going to be. So we started this about a year ago, and already these are some of the folks who have supported this. The Port of Camas-Washougal, the National Park Service is on as a partner, cities of North Bonneville, Skamania County Chamber of Commerce, Camas-Washougal Chamber of Commerce. What we've been doing is, in addition to going to the Washington Trails Association, the Sierra Club, what I would call the usual suspects, we're also trying to reach to the communities. And the reason why the communities are interested is because if we have trail systems that start within the communities, I'll give you an example. You have a number of people who will go out for a hike, and they will go out to a trailhead, and they've got their sandwich, they've got their water bottle, they filled up with gas in Portland or whatever. They go on the hike, they go hike, and they come home. They've spent $0, and they really have done very little to benefit the community. If the trailheads are within the community, so launching parts are there, then they're more likely to take the time to say, well, this restaurant Hearth is really a nice place. I should really come back here. And the ice cream shop's not so bad either. So it gives people an opportunity to really start appreciating the communities that surround the gorge. And what we're looking at is, over time, that this can become more of a destination place with multi-day excursions. If you've got a 32-mile trail from Washougal to Stevenson, and you have the ability to, say, have yurts at a state park, you have a B&B over at Cape Horn, you have other lodging in between, plus the lodging in the communities, you start creating kind of the hut-to-hut experience that they have in Europe, which is very different than what we have here, where when I talk to the economic development folks in the gorge, they're like, well, you know, we've got all the day hikes we can handle, and the summers are all, you know, filled. We don't need help. Well, what hiking does and what our organization focuses on is often what they call the shoulder seasons. You know, we have 100 hikes that we lead in the spring and the fall. And if we can start creating multi-day excursions, then it provides more of a benefit to the communities than the day hikes that come in and out of the gorge all the time. Here are some of the other supporters, and I can pass this around. On top, we list the senators from Washington and Oregon. We recently received a letter from all four of them, along with Congressman Earl Blumenauer, all supporting the Gorge Towns to Trails. And then some of the other folks that we've already seen, a number of folks in Washougal. We've made quite a bit of an effort in this Washougal to Stevenson stretch, and part of it's because our Gorge Towns to Trails manager just lives down the street. I should also say, I'm sorry I neglected to introduce, Keith Brown is our board chair, and he lives up Washougal River Road. So he's been very involved in this project, very interested in how it's going to impact the Washougal area. So I just will show this. This is, again, the Washougal to Stevenson area. These little pieces in here are actually lands that our land trust owns. The green is public land, and then the light is private land. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of a swath from this area here that can take you nearly all the way to Stevenson. And so what we're working to do is get a couple of key pieces, such as this one, which already has a trail system through it, into Forest Service hands, so we can really then make a trail that folks can use and can tie into these communities. So let's just take a quick look at this. So I think probably most of you are familiar with this. We'd start out hopefully in the Washougal, the Steigerwald National Wildlife Refuge. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife's done a great job with this area, creating a trail system. And then you start heading further east, and you get up to Cape Horn. And this is an overlook that had been a Friends of the Columbia Gorge Land Trust property. We actually paid through a fundraising effort to build this overlook. It's now Forest Service property. This is a B&B that's right near Cape Horn that could be part of the lodging along the trail. And then you head out to the Hamilton Mountain area and Beacon Rock. And Beacon Rock State Park is also one of our supporters and partners. And we keep heading east toward the property that we own. This is called the Cedar Falls property that we own that does have a trail on it right now. And this is Cedar Falls. So this is a falls that sits about 1 mile north of North Bonneville. And very few people have ever seen it. And I think Oregon gets so much credit for the waterfalls, but this is really one of the nice, beautiful ones on the Washington side that should be available for people to see, especially since it's so close to an urban area and it's surrounded by public land. So it's just a little gem. It's really fun to hike back there. So here you're at North Bonneville. The community of North Bonneville is really excited about this idea. And then you keep heading east, and eventually what we would do is work our way to Skamania Lodge. And hopefully from there we'd figure out, okay, down the road, can we then get to Carson, and can it move on? And it's been really encouraging, because as I said, Skamania County Chamber of Commerce, Skamania County, the town of Stevenson, all of them have supported it. I'll just give you, this is a couple of the other segments we have on the Oregon side, one on the Oregon, one on the Washington side, Hood River to the Dalles. And this is a trail up just above Mosier that we've already been working on. This is on property, again, that we own. And we go from Mosier through a private easement and then up to the top of this Mosier Plateau. That's the view from the top of the Mosier Plateau. And then it would tie eventually into the Discovery Center in the Dalles. And from the Discovery Center, there's a 9-mile waterfront trail that kind of keeps going east. And then this is the Lyle Cherry Orchard. And so this is about a 550-acre property our land trust owns. There's a trail system right here that people have used for years that's open to the public. we started thinking about that we would really like to connect into the community of Lisle. And so we started talking with Lisle, and we talked to the high school, because we were looking at trailhead down here, but we started talking to the high school, and they were interested in having a joint agreement where we could have the trailhead at their high school. And the reason why was they were concerned about the childhood obesity. And it's not that they were big hikers, that they wanted to get out, all of that, but they were concerned about the childhood obesity. They wanted to be able to use this also for their biology classes, to just instantly access the outdoors. So it was a great experience for us, because we didn't set out launching this project with the idea of that we're going to combat childhood obesity. But when we brought it into this town and asked, well, what are you guys interested in? They were interested in that. So that was really a lot of fun. And I don't know why these blurry pictures came in. I apologize. I've seen them before, and they look a lot better. This is actually on our property. There was a life estate right here, which meant the person who sold it to us, they were allowed to stay there until they passed away. And that person passed away earlier this year. And so in the last few months, that's what we've been able to do to clean it up. So this gives you a little bit of an overview. It's been, in the past year, I'd say the biggest success has just been reaching out to people, building up support within the actual communities that would be affected, and getting a little work done on the actual trails. We're hoping that we can eventually see something like Washougal to Stevenson happen in the next 10 years, but it takes some key land acquisition, then it takes a planning process with the Forest Service, state parks, et cetera. And so this is a long haul. This is a long-term vision that we're working on. But what we'd love to see from the City Council today is a voice of support, either signing up as a supporter or a partner. A supporter is basically you put your name on your materials, and we can say, yes, you support us. If someone's a partner, it means they're often willing to write a letter for a key acquisition, or write a letter to say, hey, we want to do this. It's a little more active. So we're excited with either, but we're very excited to also be physically a part of Washougal too. So if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Council? Paul?
I just want to make a couple of comments. Beginning, 4 years ago, I started working with Kevin and Keith on the Cape Horn Trail, which is now fully legitimized. It's part of the Forest Service inventory of recreational areas. 4 years ago, there were trails everywhere. They had grown kind of like Topsy, and some of them were in good places and some of them not so much. We now have a good system of trails out there. This is something that this Towns to Trails is something that especially Renee and TCATCH, who's not here tonight, and I have been talking about now for a number of years, and I'm really excited that you all have your offices here now. So I don't know what else to say, but
Thank you.
I think this is great. I know there have been plans for trails from basically Fort Vancouver to come all the way out to here. Is that going to connect?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a plan within Portland and Vancouver called the Intertwine, where they're talking about connections. And we've been working with the Intertwine folks because it calls on connecting from Vancouver into Camas to Washougal, and my hope would be from Washougal there. So I would hope that it would all be intertwined. And you know what we see is, I think when you're in the urban areas, like from Washougal to Vancouver, much of it would probably be multiple use with bicycles and kids. And I think even in the gorge, some of this, like Hood River to Mosier, is bicycles. I think some will be mountain bikes. Some will just be hikers, depending on the terrain, what's appropriate. But the whole idea is the interconnectivity. And I think I think there's definitely efforts underway to connect from Vancouver to this area and this area further out. So I think it's all going to slide together.
And the trail generally does not run along the river that you're proposing, correct?
Yeah, really just at Steigerwald, it runs out toward the river, but most of the part, it would be not on the river, but a little higher up. I mean, there's a section that the Forest Service owns. As you're driving on Highway 14, as you drive into the gorge and you kind of head up that hill before you hit to the farms and the Iris Farm and stuff, well, down on the side there as you're heading up the hill, that's all public land. And so likely a trail system would fit from between the highway and the river, somewhere in there, but not shoreline.
Mm-hmm. You know, I walked the Dyke Trail down there quite a bit last summer, not so much this year, but last year. And I was always hoping I could reach the Skamania County line, but you can't quite get there.
You can't quite get there yet. There's a couple obstacles.
I'd just like to say to the council, when I got appointed to this job about 3 months ago, I supported economic development for our community, and I think this is a key part of it. And I think the city should do whatever it can with its resources to make this happen.
Just have to say how exciting this is. I think all of us probably ran on a platform of tourism and introducing Washougal to the world. And originally, in the beginning, you mentioned things would start at Steigerwald, and I thought, but you just bypassed our town. You just started east of us, but obviously you've already shared that our port, the businesses downtown.
Here's and I should probably be careful in how I say that, because I think you're right. And you know, for example, I mentioned we lead about 100 hikes a year, and a lot of them are on the Washington side. And sometimes we've often done it at Gateway in Portland because it hits with TriMet, et cetera. Well, we're really working this year that one of the launching points will be, you know, right in the Washougal Square area. Good. And because, you know, West Hickey's our landlord, and hopefully we can use that parking area. They've got bathrooms at the ice cream shop. Everyone can grab a coffee, and if we can start getting our membership and the folks who go on our hikes to think of this as a launching pad, they start using it even when they're not on our hikes. Right. They're saying, well, let's go meet here. And just to get a little bit of buzz kind of creeping in incrementally, I think will help. Mm-hmm. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Dave?
Well, I guess I'm going to be the wet blanket tonight. A couple of questions for you. How is it that the private land you're talking about became public land? What process was used for that?
Well, under the National Scenic Area Act, it called for the Forest Service to get appropriations from Congress, and then they had the ability to go out and talk with willing sellers. And there's been about 40,000 acres that has been purchased since the National Scenic Area Act. Now, with the Scenic Area Act came certain regulations. And so when the Forest Service went to buy, particularly much of the land in the first 15 or 20 years, I've been on this job for about 14 years, so I've dealt with a lot of this. When they came in to buy it, the Forest Service appraised those lands as if the act did not exist. So the regulations came in, changed the valuations of the land, but the land that they bought was appraised as if the Scenic Area Act did not exist. So they were appraised based on regulations in 1986. That's how much of it came into being. Since then, and then, let's see, I'm going to go.
What was the effect of that on the price of the land? Did it go up or down?
Well, if it was praised as if the act didn't exist, then if somebody, say, had the ability to put, you know, 5 houses on a property, for example, before the act, and then the act came in and they could only put 2 in there. Well, the appraisal was if they could do 5. So the effect was they got a better deal than if they sold it on the open market.
Okay. It appears that you're in the business of changing the ownership of private lands to public lands, specifically to the Forest Service. And therefore taking it out of productive economic use and putting it into rather limited use and management by the Forest Service, which costs money. And the feds will then put all kinds of restrictions on the use of the land, which I think is your intent.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out why it's beneficial to do that when, just for example, in the state of Nevada, 90% of the state is owned by the federal government. And if I remember correctly, somewhere between 25 and 50% of this country is currently owned by the federal government. Why do we want to take more land out of productive use and put it into the reserve status that you're talking about?
Well, here's the thing with this, and again, this goes back to the passage of the National Scenic Area was a pretty extraordinary one-of-a-kind thing. And I think it was because the gorge was considered a one-of-a-kind place. You know, it really is unique around the country as far as sort of the attributes it has, the scenic, the natural, the cultural. I mean, this was a place where we've had longer, with the Native Americans, longer continuous human habitation than any place on the Nile. So it really had some rich pieces that I think a lot of people wanted to preserve. What's happening with this project, though, is it's like Washougal to Stevenson. As I said, the corridor is about 90% already there. And so with a couple of key acquisitions, you can then make the corridor and really open up the opportunity for this kind of trail segment, for this kind of tourism, for this benefit. And to me, it's almost similar to if you had a port that decided, okay, we're gonna develop this area, we're gonna do everything, but then in the end, they don't put in the technology infrastructure, the Wi-Fi, the T1 lines or whatever, because it's too expensive. Well, you're already 90% of the way there. Now you and I may have differences about whether it should have happened in the first place. But the fact is, now that you've got so much of this public land there, and so much of it is either not being used when it could be used effectively and environmentally safely, or as Paul said, it's being overrun and not being effectively managed. And there's no economic benefit out of that. I think it makes sense to prudently invest and then really hopefully reap the gains out of that.
So you've been using tax money for 25 years to bring this to fruition.
Yes, sir.
And I congratulate you on what you've done. May not agree with it, but I can see that as a real accomplishment on your part. What I'm having trouble seeing is the connection between what you're proposing and the economic benefit to Washougal. Because I've heard a lot of promises about economic benefits, and I haven't seen very many of those promises fulfilled. And so I'm just naturally skeptical of anyone who says, and this is going to provide all kinds of economic benefits, especially for Washougal. I haven't seen it.
Well, I know, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay. I can't guarantee economic benefits overnight, and I think anyone who would be a liar. But with our hiking program, for example, I have had so many calls from people who have come in, whether they're traveling from, literally people from England who are coming here because of the wildflowers in the Columbia Gorge. There are 800 species of wildflowers in the Columbia Gorge. 15 exist nowhere else in the world. So you have botanists from around the country, around the world, who come to this area, and they want to spend several days. And they're not the type of people who want to sleep on a tent and pay $5 a night. They want to be accommodated. They want to have a bottle of wine with their dinner. They want to enjoy themselves. And I've gone up to Seattle and talked with people about coming to the gorge, and they're just like, well, where would I stay? I mean, they're dumbfounded. They still haven't been introduced to the amenities that are here. And I think if we create more of a system, particularly on this side of the gorge, how many people in Vancouver, when their friends come to visit or their parents come to visit, they cross 205 and they go to Multnomah Falls? And they never, you know, it's like they go to that side. You've got some beautiful stuff, 15, 20 minutes from here. I really encourage any of you to go up to the Cape Horn Overlook and see how beautiful that is. And it's not something that you have to, you know, climb. It's something you can drive and take a short walk out there. It's as beautiful as anything on the Oregon side. It is a treasure to this side of the gorge. And I think it is going to benefit this side of the gorge. And I know so many people who have moved right here because they want that recreation benefit that's right outside their door.
I can see where that you believe in what you're saying.
I do.
I appreciate your honesty in saying that you can't guarantee it.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
taking my questions.
Eminent domain, does that come into play anywhere here?
No, there hasn't been a case of eminent domain in the gorge. Any land that's been purchased has been purchased by willing sellers and has been purchased from willing sellers. And I also would add, I think there's some of these connections are going to end up probably being easements. You know, so you're talking about a 20-foot or 30-foot swath versus, you know, okay, we're going to go buy 100 acres here. So
That was my question. Is this just a ribbon we're talking about through a piece of property, or is this?
It depends on,
Depends on what
no,
it is.
it's not, again, because there's so much that has been purchased. But it depends on the property, and it depends on the attitude of the landowner. I mean, if the landowner wants to stay there, and then we will work with them in any way we can. And part of it is also the interest of the Forest Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife if they're looking at this property. Sometimes you don't, until you get out there, you really don't know what you have. And I'll give you a quick example. When I was talking about wildflowers, we bought a property in the East Gorge, and it's beautiful. I loved it. And we bought it partly for its beauty and because it had these great stories of the Ice Age floods. It had these ponds on it and all this. Well, once we bought it, and I went out there with an archaeologist, I realized it was a hunting camp, and you could still see the structures the Native Americans built for the hunting camp, and they were still sitting there. Then we had a member who found a flower that he had never seen before. He sent one of them into the Washington Native Plant Society. This was a plant that was thought to be extinct in the state of Washington since the 1880s. We had 350 of them on our property. And sometimes you don't know. And sometimes a property like that needs to be protected. And that will be the case with some properties. With other properties, we're talking with Longview Fiber. I don't think we're going to buy, cut over or second timber, and I don't think we want to disturb the management they do. But maybe we can get a strip. Maybe we can get an easement that gets us to a place. And if it's going to be, cut over timber part of the time, that's what it is. Part of the Pacific Crest Trail runs through cut over timber areas. That's life. So
That's what you do there.
I just have a comment. I walk the Steigerwald Reserve probably 5 times a week, and aside from economic development in the area, there certainly is something about quality of life, and it's very high here in our city.
yeah,
So thank you for what
Yeah.
you're doing.
thank you.
Someone who's been familiar with, property rights litigation in this state in the past, in fact, very well-known case in the Gorge.
I remember.
Yeah. I happen to know that a lot of the land that the federal government owns in this state, they've owned since statehood, because it never was ceded to the state for control. And so there's a lot of the land that you're using for the trails been in federal ownership since 1889 or before. Or is everything you're using acquired?
Oh, no, not everything is acquired.
So some of it's just federal land?
Some of it's federal land that's just been there for a long time, and some of it's been acquired in the last 25 years. And, you know, it kind of depends sort of where you are. In the, you know, at further east, there was less public land. You know, in this area, there was a little bit more. So it's kind of a mixture.
The other comment I'd like to make is, in my other life with the City of Vancouver, I've had some discussions with Vancouver's former Economic Development Director who lives in Hood River now, and I've kind of looked at Hood River as a model that Washougal could use for its economic development and tourism promotion. And he basically said that the windsurfing is what, and the breweries is what made it take off. And I see this as sort of a, you know, I don't think windsurfing works here because Reed Island is in the way as well. But this is something that I can see promoting that kind of tourism attraction. You made a comment about we were the 6th highest ranked hiking destination.
No, it was rated 6th in the world among iconic sustainable destinations.
Okay.
So this is around the world. But the point you just made is kind of interesting in it. I've had a lot of conversations with the mayor of Hood River. And what he said something that I do think could apply to the future of Washougal. He said, you know, our economy is not based. It's really not based that much on tourism, which sounds counterintuitive. But what he said is it's recreation based. And what he means by that is not only do they have companies that are creating windsurfing boards and such, but they have people who could live anywhere in the world, and they choose to live there, and they create a business there, even though they're going to make a little bit less money, but they start building their business there because that's where they want to live. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say, you know, whatever, 10, 20 years down the line, that this spot backed up into the National Scenic Area could have the same kind of driver, that it could be that people move here because they want to be able to get easy access to those recreation areas, and this is where they decide to live because they're close enough to the metropolitan airport, because they're close enough to have good technology infrastructure, yet they and their families can get out.
We could be the Hood River without a state income tax.
So, and I'll say there was an event in Hood River called the Mai Tai, and this is, you know how everyone talks about how business is done in country clubs where these golfers go out and they cut deals. Well, this was a lot of young people, a lot from the Bay Area, and their business is done while kite sailing. So they did the Mai Tai down in Maui, and a Mai Tai here. Well, they did a Mai Tai in the Gorge. And I was talking to this one guy from Minneapolis, and he was talking about how he'd like to live in Hood River, but that the state income tax would cost him an extra $200,000 a year. So he was thinking of moving to Washington. And as I did that math in my head, you know, it was, you know, I guess amusing, sad, whatever. But it just shows you that there's some people that are craving for the right quality of life, and if the tax incentives, whatever, are there, if the infrastructure's there, they'll make the move.
We're closer to PDX than
Yeah.
the river, even with the freeway.
Exactly.
Well, I think it sounds wonderful. I'm encouraged to know that the property owners are actually willing participants in the land acquisition, and they're fully aware of what the property will be used for, et cetera. My question kind of piggybacks on Councilmember Freeman's question. When you acquire the property and the trails are constructed, how much land around the trail is needed to keep it protected generally?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're asking.
Well, when you're taking property to build a trail, naturally people will wander or use the side areas for resting or whatever it is that they do. So how much property around the trail, you know, north and south of it, or otherwise?
It depends on.
Is it an acre? Or you need an acre around?
You know, let's just say you're dealing with an easement. Sometimes, you know, what you may want to do is do a wide enough easement that in case you have a slide or something like that, you can move the trail and not violate the easement. So I've seen some easements.
Are they leveled also, the trails, or do
It depends. It just depends on the area. Sometimes you're on a steep slope, you know, sometimes you're flat, sometimes, you know, so and partly it depends on what the landowner wants to sell or doesn't want to sell. And it used to be, recently the guidelines have changed in the gorge, but it used to be that, you know, in certain areas you couldn't buy less than 40 acres. So if you were buying in the special management area, you had to buy 40 acres even if you only needed 5. Well, now, if it's for conservation or recreation purposes or something, you can buy a smaller piece. They've added that flexibility to it. So it really is kind of a case-by-case basis. And so in some cases, you know, there might be an easement. In other cases, it might be a case where, for example, our land trust may go in and buy 80 acres. Well, the Forest Service may come back and say, well, you know, we only want 10. And that would mean that we would hold the remaining in perpetuity. And as of now, our land trust, even though we're a nonprofit, we do pay property taxes on all of our properties. So that is still income that's being generated for the counties.
Thank you.
I know I didn't answer it really.
No, that's fine.
But that
I was
is-
just, it was a curiosity
Okay.
question because I'm not familiar with the building of the trails
Right.
to know exactly, you know, what you would need around it if it's a small amount of land or a large amount of land. So you said it's
Okay.
dependent upon the particular piece of property.
It really is.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Been here 7 years, and first thing I learned about, of course, like you said, was Multnomah and the trail system over there. And I'm just discovering things like Dog Mountain and Sleeping Beauty and Trout Lake and wonderful spots that are on our side. How do we do a really thorough job of advertisement? Since I've been here 7 years, and I only learned about that because a local that was born and raised here told me about it. What methods do you use to advertise what we have here in Washington, and how do I access that?
Well, like I said, one of the things that we do really the most is we lead about 100 hikes a year. And most of them, some of them are member-only hikes, but most of them are just open to the public, and they're free. And we advertise in the Columbian and the Post-Record, and we have, you know, a Facebook page and all this stuff. But then we're also working with the Skamania County Chamber of Commerce, trying to promote this stuff. One of the other partners we have, which I think is also going to be important to this community and such, is the Washington Trails Association, and they have a Southwest Washington field person, and they're leading a lot of trips and getting people out here and such. So it really is kind of, for us, it's sort of out of social media, but it's building up more and more, and I'd say that our membership and Clark County, I think, continues to grow and continues to be active and interested, and then those folks sort of feed into others. And we host what we call a Gorge on Tap, and that's, you know, often at a brew pub, and it allows people to come and hear about gorge issues. And we keep waiting for Amnesia Brewing to open,
We're gonna be opening
and
soon.
then we'll get in there for our Gorge on Tap here. So, you know, we have about 13 staff, and we spend a lot of money on a lot of our resources on outreach and trying to get people to learn more about the gorge. But it's a big task. And
Will your office here in Washougal have brochures and all these things where people will want to come and find information?
yeah, and I think because we're going to be here, and our staff person lives over in the Cape Horn area, and she'll be using this office, I think you'll see more of our materials in the library and in other places, and just, you know, they won't run out. We'll keep filling the racks because we'll have more of a presence here.
Is your contact information in the presentation we received?
I think so. If not, I'll leave a couple business cards.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things for you, Connie Jo. A magical phrase, Curious Gorge.
Yes.
There
I've
is
seen
a
that.
book, and there's also a website that are fabulous. You can get in touch with Kevin through friendsofthegorge.org.
Actually, gorgefriends.org.
Gorgefriends.org,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And I also wanted to mention to Dave that Commissioner Pearce of Skamania County has been a longtime supporter of this. If you don't know Paul, he's a pretty interesting character. He's a former policeman from Camas, and big guy. And Paul and I have worked on a number of projects together to try and support funding, for example, for the SR-14 projects out in the gorge. And I've also had some conversations with the mayor and the city clerk at Skamania. They're not only champing at the bit to make this happen, they're paddling as fast as they can. And the other thing that they're intrigued by is right now the Pacific Crest Trail, when it comes across the river, well, it could use some help. And so that's one of their other projects, and they've gotten into coalitions with both Hood River and Cascade Locks to make all of those kinds of things happen. So there also are coalitions, regional coalitions happening all along the river, on both sides of the river, where people in the Dalles get together with people in Wishram and so on and so forth. So this is beginning to take off a little bit. And the other thing to say is that if there's one thing that you learn when you go to economic development school, it is that tourism can't bring you any money unless you have things for people to do here. And the classic thing, of course, is hotel beds. We now have 74 nice beds over at the Best Western. But Amnesia Tavern and the other brew taverns and the Hearth and the other restaurants that are coming, those all get to be a big player. It's a critical, anytime you're doing economic development of any sort, it's a critical mass problem. You can't get people to build offices here unless there's some place to go to lunch. You can't get people to build a place to go to lunch unless there's people to go there. So there's this thing that has begun to happen. I hope we've reached a takeoff point. And frankly, Adam Taylor at Lone Wolf Development gets a lot of credit for Amnesia, for the incubator building, which is almost full now. And so those things are beginning to happen for us. Will they happen next week? No. Will they happen over the next handful of years? I think so.
Dave?
Just briefly, I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but I've got real concerns about it. And I need to go through the process of resolving those concerns before I can support it.
Okay.
I appreciate the information you've given me. Paul, I appreciate the perspective you've given me.
Any other items from council? Kevin, thank you for being here. Keith,
Yeah.
thank you for coming along as well. You know, I certainly would echo Councilman Boger's comments that I think for many years we've all realized, or many of us have realized, that tourism and recreation is going to be a huge part of the legs that we stand on for our community going forward. We've still yet to figure out what that means and really have a big discussion on what that means. I can certainly empathize a little bit with Councilman Shoemaker's comments as well of show me.
Right.
At the same time, I think we have to realize that part of that bringing it and proving that it's going to happen is our responsibility as well. It's figuring out what our role is in that and promoting that and really causing that to happen. So we certainly, as Connie Jo said, we certainly have more space for you to add on other than Steigerwald. You know, starting down the port area, the tunnel is just a great spot to be
Right.
able to pick up and go out from, and hopefully soon we'll have the rest of that connection figured out from Marina Park all the way up here to the dike and the tunnel area, so at least it'll give you a couple more miles in there.
Okay.
We appreciate you being here in town. Hopefully, hopefully your staff member that'll be staffing the office here along with the Washington Trails Association will make some time to stop down and say hello.
She will. I'm sure she will. Thank you both.
Awesome.
Thank you all. Great questions. Everyone, great questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Okay.
Suzanne, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I thought maybe you might want to take new business item C1 out of order just quickly. There is an item for business next week, which is a follow-on to this, and maybe it'd be appropriate to do that quickly.
You bet.
Just have Suzanne review that.
The summary statement is staff is submitting a request from the Friends of the Columbia River Gorge for the City of Washougal to support the Gorge Town to Trails Connecting Communities to Trails program. As a supporter, the city would permit Friends of the Columbia Gorge to list the city as a Gorge Towns to Trails supporter and keep up to date with the program's progress and meetings. The Park Board unanimously voted to support this program on March 7, 2012.
Any questions from council? Brent?
Go ahead. This takes a motion to...
Not tonight.
Oh, no.
Not tonight. We're in a workshop.
Okay.
So is
Well, I guess I'll have a question. This does not mean that we, to kind of give voice to Councilmember Shoemaker's concerns. If there's something that comes up in the process that we don't agree with, like, you know, I don't know, eminent domain. I mean, he didn't say that they didn't have authority to use eminent domain. That would necessarily not include our signing on to it. I mean, I guess we can deal with that next week when we consider it.
In your packet for item Roman numeral 5C1, there's a little summary of the project, but at the very end of that item is the actual support statement where the mayor would sign, and next week the action in front of you will be authorizing the mayor to sign it. It makes a pledge basically in support of the concept, the broader concept, and then it consents to two very specific things that Suzanne already mentioned. We're listed as a supporter, and that will stay informed. So it really doesn't commit to anything.
Okay, well, I absolutely support the broad concept, but there might be some details that I subsequently have some problems with.
any other questions from council? Okay. Suzanne, thank you. Mrs. Forsberg, would you like to give us a...
Before Suzanne, please, can I say something?
Sure, Suzanne.
Possibly.
I just wanted to say thank you to Suzanne for organizing the Community Service Day. We had, what, close to 200 people involved, didn't we?
They were scattered all over the city, yes.
And I spread gravel and stacked blocks up at Eldridge Park, so I have no idea what other people did, but I've heard rumors.
Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I'd just like to recognize that our state legislator, Liz Pike, is here, and she was with us on Saturday morning, too. She came with Brent and picked up trash along Hathaway Park, so just appreciate you being here, Liz. Representative Pike.
If we could, let's hold those comments until later in the meeting.
I just wanted to say it because Susan was here to sing.
Gotcha.
It was a great job because you really reached out. That's good. Thank you.
Jennifer, your long-awaited second quarter update.
Aha, it turned on.
So the projector
I know.
itself out during the question.
We've got to fix this thing.
So it's warming up a bit here.
Sorry about that, Dave.
To go with it. Oh, there we go. Yes, I apologize for the slight delay in presenting the second quarter update, but finally I get to be here tonight and present this to you. And I'm going to start off the bat by saying it's extremely boring and everything's running on track. So, boom, I'm done. No? All right. So for the second quarter general and street fund revenue side, we're at about 50%, 49%. So right where we're supposed to be, on track with our budget. The next slide has the actuals compared to budget, and then also comparable to second quarter last year, and then it compares the 2 quarters as well. Property taxes are, we got our first round and we're at about 56.9%. I'm not sure if that's just because people paid their whole amount in April, or if we're truly ahead of budget on that line item, but we'll know more in a month or so. Everything else is tracking right along. You will notice that the miscellaneous sales is excessively high. That is thanks to our EECBG grant. Those are our PUD refund checks that we got for switching out the light bulbs. Those were our incentive dollars that we got for the per wattage savings. They were called CLIP rebates. We double, triple, quadruple checked with the feds to ensure that those weren't supposed to be reported in some other fashion, but they are just general fund revenue that we can use for any purpose.
Excellent.
Questions or comments on revenues? Okay. Expenses, again, oh, go
Actually,
ahead.
I just wanted, subdivision fees leaped out at me.
As high or low?
High.
70. Is that where we're at? 70,000 for subdivision?
We're almost 60% of budget.
I don't know how that's screwed.
It's been pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're busy.
The building season.
It's been busy. We have upped the revenue side projections in community development more this year than we have in the past, and we're still holding Mitch up on a pedestal. So.
I'm sure he deserves it.
Expenses are at about 45% in general and street. Again, just to remind you so that you don't panic as to why your budget's at almost 100%. It's the election costs that were paid after the 13th month. We weren't able to apply them to 11, so they were paid in 12. So that's the biggest one that jumps out there. You're at 73,000 out of 76 for budgeted. But since it's general fund as a lump sum, it won't matter on a department basis at the end of the year, because the other departments, we should be able to absorb that cost in the overall general budget. Engineering is a little high compared to last year, and that's because we didn't have a city engineer at this point last year. Rob didn't come on until July. So that's why the engineering budget for 12 is higher than 11. Other than that, we're on track. Okay, blank stares. Go on to the next one. I had to have fun with it, right?
Boring.
You've been waiting on pins and needles for this, I know. Water, sewer, and stormwater revenues. Water, sewer, we're right on track again at the 47.9%. Stormwater appears to be under for revenues, but that's not the case. We have the capital items for the bond projects, for the stormwater projects budgeted in that fund. So the revenues will be transferred in. We just haven't done those projects yet. So same on the expense side. That's why the expenses look low. It's just because we haven't done those capital projects yet in 12. So for instance, on the stormwater utility there, the other revenue line item of 510, that's the revenue being transferred in for the projects, and then the corresponding expenditure would be in the lump sum there. So that's why those appear to be low. The normal O&M budgets are right on track. Questions on the utilities? We're coming to the fun one. I haven't had time to find a better worksheet for this yet to compare all the funds. The ones that are popping out, I'm sure the ones in deficit status are project funds, and that's just reimbursement and timing based for those. They will catch up and true up. But other than that, the funds are on track. We're doing great. Investment update. Our LGIP, local government investment pool earnings are off the charts. Whopping 0.12% in January. We're up to 0.17 in June. So cruising along there. So we've made $7,073 in interest in the LGIP to date. And again, that's very liquid. So it's basically if I need the money tomorrow, I can get it. So that's why the rate's so low on that. And that's across all funds. That's not just the general fund. Our bond investments, these are the longer term, anywhere from a year to 5 year investments, are going along as planned. And we've made about $38,000 in interest across all funds. Mostly those are the bond funds that we're earning some interest on before we spend them on the capital projects. But it's broken out by fund, if you have any questions. Pretty standard. And that's it. We're tracking.
Questions from council? Comments? Paul?
I know I'm a wonk, but I really do find this kind of thing exciting.
Thank you, Paul.
Jennifer, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, moving into new business, community development. Mitch?
What do we need on here? Anything? Okay.
It's our exciting public hearing in regards to floodplain regulations.
You can get it where it needs to be.
Good evening. This agenda bill that's before you for next week is to hold a public hearing on the what we're calling clarifications to the standards that you recently passed related to floodplain regulations. I included in your agenda bill Exhibit C, which is the summary sheet, if you will, that has the three areas that we're making the changes. They're fairly straightforward, as I noted. The recommended action related to these clarifications is to hold a public hearing to take public testimony. Council desires make a motion to read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Questions from council? We are moving through these quick now. Mitch, thank you. No score updates. Chief Schumacher, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
What I have before you is going to be an ordinance that will prohibit the use of a sky lantern. For those that don't know what sky lanterns are, I'll be showing you that in a little bit, but I do have a handout that I placed in front of you. Our summary statement on this is sky lanterns are an airborne display device used for entertainment. They're typically made of paper with a wood or wire frame, a candle, fuel cell, waxy, flammable material, or other open flame in the lantern provides a heat source to heat the air inside the lantern provided to lift. When lit, the lantern rises up and floats in the air to create a visual display. Once airborne, it's impossible to control the flight of the sky lantern. They can reach altitude as high as 1,500 feet, and the burn time is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Eventually, they lose their lift and return to Earth. It is possible that the heat source in the sky lantern will still be active when it lands. Since the route is unpredictable, they could land on something flammable, resulting in a possible fire. This ordinance provides the fire marshal with authority to prohibit sky lanterns. The proposed ordinance will create a definition for sky lanterns will make it unlawful to sell, use, or discharge. Since sky lanterns do not meet the definition of a firework, changes to the use can be enforced upon recording instead of the normal 1-year waiting period that you have changes to with fireworks. Recommended action, motion to prohibit the sale, discharge, and use of sky lanterns within the city limits of Washougal. What happened was back in early August, it was one of those 100 plus 2+ days. The engine, they dispatch them to balloons in the air on fire. Okay, so they're going, what? You know, so they're responding, and when they arrive, they find one balloon that's burning on somebody's roof, and they find this one that was in a pile of bark that was starting to ignite. And so here you have a situation, hot August day, east wind's blowing about 30 miles an hour. The balloons lifted off, they floated, they landed in an adjoining neighborhood. And this was the scenario. So this is what a sky lantern looks like. You wanna pass that around?
We've seen it at the safety meeting, yes.
Yeah. Balloons in the daytime.
So there's the fuel cell there, they're igniting, it's made out of wax. These things are like 99 cents, you can buy them online. Nice little phrase there, I love you.
As I burn down your house.
And they're kind of neat, to be honest, but they're just.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
But anyway, they're just not, we shouldn't be allowed to set these off here in the city. So, gets warm, hot air rises. And pretty soon away it goes.
It's quite a flame.
Yeah.
Chief, is the material itself flame retardant? I see it's burned, but I would think that that's
No, it's just.
so close.
It's
that-
rice.
Yeah, it's just tissue paper.
It's tissue paper, yeah.
And there you go. So you have no control over it. There's no, you don't know when it's gonna come down, where it's gonna come down. And they say the burn time is anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes. Okay.
So it's long gone.
Yeah. Let me show you. Now this, I believe this was in Thailand.
Oh,
Look at
my
that.
Lord.
That'd have been fun.
It's a lot damper in Thailand.
I was going to say, you know, in a rainforest, that's probably not much of a problem.
So anyway, it was a hot August day, crews responded, and I'm going, Skylanders, I hadn't heard of them, you know. But doing some research, Kittitas County and also Mukilteo, they've banned these so far. There's talks for other communities doing it. So, are there any questions on this?
Right, Joe?
What's the ordinance on the county areas?
It hasn't been addressed yet in the county.
Okay.
I know they've had an incident in the county with the use of one of these. And we had a second one happen in the city as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
At the monthly public safety meeting last Monday, all three council members that were there approved of the idea of regulating these things. As I understand it, they get to an altitude of around 1,500 feet,
Yes, they could.
which in this area offers a hazard to aerial navigation, because we have Grove Airfield right over there.
Yes.
And people fly up to 1,200 feet and then fly directly over to Troutdale at that altitude. So you've got a hazard to aerial navigation.
Jennifer?
Yes. I definitely support regulating these as well. It just appears to be a fire hazard, and considering, you know, we are in the middle of fire season, and, you know, we have sent out people from various fire departments to fight these fires in other parts of the state of Washington and Oregon. I would say this is definitely, you know, needed, and it seems like people have taken up flying them, which, like you said, you know, when you think about it, what is this sky lantern? As soon as I saw that video, I recognized it from a Disney film called Tangled. Yeah, Mitch,
Yeah.
people with kids, you know what I'm talking about.
Mitch, what do you do in the evenings?
So, you know, we're not going to blame Disney, but anyway, I do support this.
Brent?
I have a jurisdictional question for our city attorney here. I don't know if he's here to talk at our workshop or he's just here for the executive session, but what if someone sets these off in the county and they float over into Washougal? Would we have any jurisdiction to?
The proposed ordinance, this relates to setting them off in the city, selling them within the city, as far as whether there's jurisdiction.
Could we broaden it to, if someone sets one off outside of Washougal and it floats into Washougal.
I think you probably could. There's an impact in the city.
Maybe that's something we want to think
It's a
about.
little bit difficult to enforce that part of it.
Yeah.
I'll be taking this before the Camas City Council as well, so.
Is Fire Marshal Dunnigan, is he taking it up on a countywide basis, or?
Not at this time.
Paul?
Kind of along with what Brent said, my only concern is, can we make it broader, more general, so that we're not speaking specifically about sky lanterns, but pretty much anything that's aerial and burning
Right, I
other
think
than
in the
fireworks?
ordinance it
Projectiles.
does describe other things other than just skyline.
Excellent. And I kind of missed something. My attention lapsed. We can make this an emergency ordinance so that it takes effect immediately?
Right, upon being recorded. Fireworks, if you remember, takes a year. and
Right.
The state of Washington has deemed these not to be considered a firework.
Great. And
The normal course would be 5 days after passage of the public worship. If you wanted to have it be an emergency, I doubt if it qualifies as that, quite frankly.
really, even after we've had a fire crew dispatched to a fire?
Twice.
One time, only a month ago.
Okay, all right, well, 5 days is quick
Council
enough.
wants to make a finding that it's an emergency, we could do that, probably.
5 days is quick enough.
Thank you.
Well, does this fall under the burn ban at all? I mean, I know burning is burning trash and that type of thing, but it was also talking about fires. Certain things are allowed, fire, your small fire pits, barbecues.
Yeah, recreational.
Is this
fires-
going to fall under the burn ban?
No. Well, if they did ignite it, we could probably get them on the burn ban. So, within the next, before we get, if this passes, becomes recorded, we probably can get them on some type of burn ban.
So that addresses Councilman Greenlee's concern, I think. If we want to get this done immediately, we can use that
Yeah, I think that
avenue.
would be an avenue.
It's just a 5-day waiting period anyway.
That's not long, but
Yeah.
you never know what's going to happen in the next sunny weekend.
And then the other legal question I have is there anything we can do to create civil liability for anyone who does this and creates a problem?
It already exists. There's nothing, we don't create civil anything.
I agree, it's not, we don't create civil liability, it's probably violating an ordinance. If we were found guilty of violating an ordinance, that'd be the basis for civil liability as well.
Almost prima facie, so, yeah.
Now, violating an ordinance is not liability per se anymore, it used to be, it's not. But it would give a strong argument to somebody that said, well, they violated this ordinance, they were proved to be violating it, and they caused damage to someone else. That's a pretty strong case.
It would set a standard of negligence.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from council? Okay. Thanks, Chief. We'll see you next week. David, council meeting times. We've been here before.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One more time, I think, hopefully to potentially bring a conclusion to the issue of your meeting times. And at next week's meeting, I'll have a resolution for you based upon your feedback this evening. As you know, we've been talking about a new meeting schedule, moving from 4 times a month to twice a month. And the proposal that will be in your resolution next week, as a reminder, is that you would meet twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Mondays, except in December when you would be scheduled to meet 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The proposed details of the timing of the meeting would be to start workshops at 5 and have them go through 6:30. Then you'd have a short break. where you could have dinner and then begin your regular meeting at 7 until you're completed with business. We would continue, as is the current practice, to meet on a Tuesday following a Monday holiday. And just as a note, we mentioned that there'll be a couple of Planning Commission meetings that will need to be adjusted, and Mitch has indicated that that isn't a problem. One of the questions that came up the last time we talked about this, it's not germane to your resolution per se, but would like you to be thinking about this. At this time, what staff is proposing, just based upon a query of colleague communities and my own personal experience, is that when you have such a schedule that transcends the dinner time like that, it is common for a light dinner or snack to be provided, and that would be the proposal for the council and the mayor and the staff. That would be for both of those sessions, and depending upon how we would do that, that's a range of cost annually that you see on the screen. There's another option, which would be that you not make such appropriation or such accommodation out in the budget. I think we can accommodate this in the budget for the remainder of the year once this starts in mid-October, and I think we could accommodate it in forthcoming budgets. But certainly that will be your decision, and I guess at budget time, ultimately that would be your call. Otherwise, it would be some other approach where everyone's making individual contributions, basically, and we'd pull it together and get your light dinner taken care of. I just think 30 minutes is not long enough time for everybody to kind of go off and take care of that and come back. And as a reminder, part and parcel with this, we talked about changing how we format our packets for workshops, and that we would discontinue the primary use of our workshops as a walkthrough for the next action agenda. We would discontinue formal packets, although there would still be information that's provided to you. We could call that a packet, but it wouldn't necessarily have the form that you've been used to for workshops. And with our commitment, as we discussed before, that we wouldn't be bringing things for your action without having vetted them through with you. And in fact, this particular item, before I get to that, we are looking to upgrade our AV system. Hopefully we can do that this year. If we're able to do that, I think we can potentially return to that round table format that we had, if that is what the council would like to do. Just a placeholder for you, something to come. Next week there'll be a resolution, and I'll show you what the exhibit to that will be in a moment. We'd meet in our regular meeting next week. You'd meet in your regular workshop on the second Monday on the 8th. You'd meet in your regular meeting on the 15th, and then on the 22nd the transition would begin. That's the fourth Monday in October, and that would be your first combined workshop and meeting. And then the next time you would meet, because it's a fifth Monday at the end of the month, next month, would be on the 13th, and that's would also be a combined meeting. So that's the way the transition would work. The resolution would have it take effect beginning on the 22nd. And I want to go back to the...
Dave, what happened to November 6th? Oh, that would be the first. That would be the first. That's right.
Right. November 6th would be a first. And this will pull up your packet. As you saw in your packet, there's an exhibit there with the very straightforward changes that will be presented as the exhibit to the resolution. It essentially changes your meeting times from 4 times to 2 times on the 2nd and the 4th. It changes your starting time from 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock for your regular meetings, and from 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock for your workshop meetings. So the change, the actual change to your council rules is very, very straightforward. And I will get there momentarily. There we go. So you can see the changes are very simple, very straightforward. So that's what will be in your packet next week. There'll be a resolution, an agenda bill and a resolution, and then these changes to your council rules. This is what I wanted to explain a moment ago. This is an example of how we would work this type of a policy change under the scenario where we're not using workshops per se as a formal dress rehearsal or walkthrough for the action agenda at the following meeting. In this particular case, we've had, I believe, 3 now, maybe 4 workshops on the topic. So we've very much vetted this topic with you. And in the last workshop leading up to an action, we have what you would be doing, but we haven't prepared an agenda bill that says everything that I've just been saying, and we don't have the resolution that has the whereases, such as whereas the council has desired to change the meeting times, and that this resolution does that. That be in your packet next week. Pretty straightforward. So this is an example of typically how you would expect that to flow in the new process. So with that, turn it back to council. If there's any questions, next week it'll be time to make a decision about whether to go from 4 to 2 and to do it second and fourth with a half-hour break. And don't really need a decision about the funding of dinners per se next week. The mayor has the authority to work within the given appropriation, as you know, for the remainder of this year, and we can accommodate that type of an expenditure. Unless it's your express wish to not have us do that, then we would not do it. So you don't need to make any supplemental appropriations or anything, and then we would look to have it in the budget for 13.
Okay, Joe?
Would you, 2 questions. Would you remind me why we need 3 meetings in December? I know you had a reason.
Right. On a second and fourth week schedule, just looking out into the future and including this year, that 4th Monday in December is right smack dab in the holiday season, and it's a meeting we would probably typically cancel. And then we'd be left to 1 meeting in December to get the end of the year business done.
And we're required to have...
You have to have 1 meeting by statute. So it would suffice for the statute, but I believe it would leave us short. I would anticipate that potentially what would happen is the mayor, under the authority that you've already granted him to cancel a meeting with proper notice, might be canceling one of those 3. But it makes sure that we're set up to take care of the business at the end of the year.
And having not sat here through a December, I don't really realize the workload. So from your experience, you say we should schedule 3, and that it can be canceled. That's a great point.
We have flexibility.
Question number 2, you said that there won't be a walkthrough and there won't be a packet in the workshop. What will our... Well, I love the way you guys prep us.
We will continue to
prep. What would
prep.
that look like?
We will continue to prepare the council for items that require action, but it'll look a little different. This particular item that we're talking about right now, and how we've dealt with it over the last several weeks and the last several meetings, is a perfect example of how it would be.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments from council?
I'll just say I'm supportive of this, and I think we should pay for our own dinners.
Any other discussion?
Me too.
Okay. We'll look for your magic by next week.
There'll be a resolution. Right.
We are now at that point in the agenda. Second chance for anyone from the public that would like to address council. Yes, please step forward. If you'd give your name and address.
My name is David Sheeharn. I'm a candidate for state representative of the 18th Legislative District, position number 2. Just want to introduce myself. I'm a resident of Philida, and I am a retired computer systems engineer. I've also a very active community volunteer. I volunteer for the Watershed Stewards, sponsored by WSU Vancouver, the Stream Stewards, sponsored by the Clark Public Utilities District, the Community Emergency Response Team, sponsored by the Fire Department, and the Medical Reserve Corps, sponsored by the Clark County Public Health Facility. And I'm just wanted to introduce myself to the council. I know Joyce Lindsay from various other volunteer activities I've been involved in, and just wanted to thank you for having the Gorge Town to Trails presentation. That was very interesting.
Thank you for being here this evening. Rose, could you turn on the other lights for us, please? Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to address council?
Well, we have a state representative here. I wonder if she has any words for us.
She hasn't jumped up and down yet.
No?
I'm speechless.
Okay. Under Mayor's report, I have 4 items for you this evening. One you should have in your mailboxes, if you haven't received it already, a cover letter and some little bit of explanation from the Bureau of Ratings, the State Bureau of Ratings. Our building codes have now been upgraded in their ratings according to the building code effectiveness rating from a 4 to a 2, both on residential and on commercial construction. All of that information goes into a lot of the ways that insurance underwriters underwrite liability premiums, all that type of stuff that have to do with what is built and what's maintained in our community. So kudos to the entire community development department and Joseph for going through that information, going through the audit that we had for it, and being able to get that rating moved so quickly. So,
Mayor, if I could just add, that 2 rating is quite an accomplishment. I think there are roughly a dozen communities in Washington that share that distinction. So we are doing very well here in Washougal, and as you mentioned, it's a credit to the level of training, credentialing, the support for training and credentialing through our budget for that program and the efforts of the program. And hopefully it will help insurance rates.
hopefully. As Paul mentioned earlier, we did have a community service project effort on Saturday, and quite frankly, I was flabbergasted how many people were up there at the high school ready to take out. So that was very, very cool. I didn't get to go out and help, but I got to bring some coffee and say hello to a few folks and hopefully help them feel better about what they were out there and doing. That they had folks from little toddlers on up. It was very cool. So we'll be making sure to send out some thank you notes along those lines. This Saturday, a couple of events this Saturday. The Hathaway Boat Ramp, just a reminder that we'll be doing our reopening of that at 11 a.m. down in Lower Hathaway Park. I'm not sure how she's going to do it yet, but Suzanne has a drift boat that hopefully will be there to try and drift into the water as it continues to go down. But that'll be at 11 a.m. And then Saturday afternoon, for those of you that are dying to know the newest updates, Mayor Higgins and myself will be doing an official weigh-in up at Carden Field at Camas High School at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'll see how that goes. We'll actually be part of, I'm not sure how far Scott is or how long Scott is going to walk, but Dale Rule, one of our community helpers and a resident over on the west side of Camas and a football coach for Camas, is doing a 24-hour walk that day. So other than the Hathaway Boat Ramp rededication, I plan to try and be there for all 24 hours, minus a couple for the Hathaway Park stuff. So we'll see how far Scott makes it. I think we're stopping every 2 hours for a little bit of, 1, change shoes, 2, I'm told change directions that we're walking. He tried to do it last year, always going the same way, and for the next 3 days couldn't move. And somebody mentioned to me, you might want to turn around and go the other direction every once in a while. So
That's good advice.
that'll be happening Saturday as well. The walk actually goes from 9 o'clock Saturday morning to 9 o'clock on Sunday morning.
Wow. Crazy.
Weather's supposed to be unbelievable. So there you go. Any items from council? County Joe.
The Washougal Community Coalition that meets monthly is this Thursday at 4:30. And I know that they participated also with another group. Jennifer, I can't come up with the name of it. Do you remember the name of the group that they participated in working in Washougal in the cleanup? I'm sorry, there was a county-wide effort for cleanup and assisting people with specific needs. So our coalition was involved in that. You might have seen them down at Hathaway in red. Anybody in red was from the coalition. So thank you.
Any other items from council? Joyce?
Saturday, I was over at Hartwood Park watching Spencer Bradley work on his Eagle Scout project, and there were a lot of kids, and they worked really hard. They were shoveling gravel, and the city had put the piles of gravel, then they were putting it on wheelbarrows. There were parents, and it was a very lively experience, and Suzanne was planting trees. It was nice. It's going to be a great park.
1,900 lineal feet of gravel is a lot of gravel.
Yes.
Brent?
I enjoyed the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society dinner Saturday. Councilmember Greenlee was there and Councilmember Shoemaker was there, and had a great event. We have really, truly an exceptional and unique organization here to take care of our animals, and I look forward to working with them in the future.
Cool. Paul?
I just wanted to reiterate that I was up spreading gravel and building block walls up in the new park. I particularly want to thank Ernie Suggs and all of the other people in the LDS community here. Literally hundreds of them turned out. It was an amazing event. So I particularly want to thank the LDS community for their participation.
Dave?
Am I talking about the, we had a neighborhood meeting up on, because of speeding up on 40th Street. And Dave Shoemaker was there, as was James Dunn and Sergeant Rennian, discussing the problems of speeding in our community, but on that street particularly. It was a very productive meeting, and I think we came up with, if not a plan, at least an ability to work together with the neighborhood to help them.
Dave?
If I can add to that, on the assumption that advance notice of speed traps gets people to abide by the speed limit, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood here, and Dawn, I hope you'll print this, that as a result of that meeting, there will be some enforcement efforts along 32nd and 34th Street to cut down the speeding that was taking place up there. Turns out that 50% of the people were speeding up there, and that's over almost 8,100 vehicles over a week period, and that's only going one direction. So there's 50% of those. That's a lot of pickings for the police department. Forewarned is forearmed.
Any other items from council? Okay, with that, we will move into executive session. We do have an executive session this evening to deal with potential litigation. I'm going to say we'll probably be 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit less than that. Obviously, we're in workshop, so there's no action afterwards. So, with that, let's go ahead and hold it here. We've got nothing else to come back in for, so